Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I'm your host. You can catch this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and you can catch any content that I put out there on pretty much all major platforms, but it's at the Construction Mentor. Throw some underscores in there, but you can find that on Instagram, TikTok, X, Snapchat. I got to post in a bunch of places right now. I honestly can't even recite them all. But today we have an interesting topic. I'm just going to get right into it. We're going to talk about a forbidden topic, something that nobody wants to talk about, and there are reasons why. Maybe we'll talk about why. But it is one of the most requested topics that I cover. It's been requested for a long time. And if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I bring in guests oftentimes to share their story and their experience. And there's no one better than Wilson, a.k.a. Will Betances, to do just that. Will, how are you?
I'm doing good. And you, Willa?
I'm all right. So Will has been on the podcast before. He's a business owner, one of the tri-state areas. I feel like you could call a lot of things a tri-state area, but Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York in that part of the world. And he has experience both in union and non-union, and that's exactly what we want to talk about today. I think that we both have a unique perspective, number one, because Will came up through the trades. He's had experience in both union and non-union. I'm a GC. I've worked in several different countries. I've worked in all kinds of markets all over North America. I've worked union, non-union. I've been a super with union, super with non-union, project manager, executive. I've been on the engineering side, and I've seen union and non-union operate. So I have a pretty good pulse, and I think between the two of us, we can cover it. So, Will, before I do want you to kind of give your intro about your experience, how you came up and your involvement in the union, but I do just want to set the stage with how I personally feel about unions, so that nothing that I say, gets misconstrued or gets lost. I would consider myself net pro union. What does that mean? I would say that it's a net positive, right? Yep. Meaning I don't agree with everything that they do. I don't agree with everything that they say. I don't think that the end all be all of construction, but if you put a gun to my head and I had to run a project with either union trades or non-union trades, I'd probably pick the union ones. That's not to say that there are no good non-union trades. There's plenty of companies that are great non-union companies and that can compete right up there, if not outperform the union guys. But I think just overall, the level of performance, the quality, the speed, the professionalism across the board is there more with the unions than the non-unions. I think like with the unions, I think there's A players, B players, C players. I think with the non-union, in my experience, I think it's like A and then like D. Yeah. There's like no in between. Yeah. Right. So, that's my experience as a GC, as an engineer, somebody on the client side, and we can get into the things that I agree with that they do, the things where I think that they should improve or that they're missing it, and where I think they're kind of losing their grip on a lot of these major cities. But Will, why don't you give everybody an introduction to your career, how you came up, and how you feel currently?
So I appreciate that. So my name is Will. I came out in Queens, New York. So as you know, with New York City, it's primarily union, everything dominated. Growing up, everyone said the hack to life is just get a union job and you're going to get taken care of, So I'm pretty sure it's the same with Boston, right? Where it's like,
yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I mean, I'm from Boston. You hear the accent sometimes. My father was a union pipe fitter for 40 years. I grew up, pay your union dues before you pay your mortgage. That was like the mantra in my house. So I also have that perspective.
So it's the same thing. It was like all our neighbors, all our friends, all my family, all their friends were saying, just get a union job and you're taken care of. There's nothing to worry about. Just get a union job. But as I started going through school, I went to Thomas A. Edison High School. It's a vocational high school, one of the few left in New York City. So as you can imagine, they're taking out shop classes throughout, the U.S. New York City holds a small percentage of vocational high school. So what was so exciting about Thomas A. Edison High School was when you graduate, they actually send you into the union right when you graduate. You already did all your shop classes. So once again, what was so exciting about finishing shop class, what was so exciting about high school was, once again, everybody finishes high school and they go to college for 4 years. When I finished high school, I went straight to work. But I already had a leg up compared to other individuals who went to the trades. because there's a lot of individuals who went through high school and just started working in construction. So we both had the same starting in construction, basically at 18. The difference between me and everybody else was I already finished my electrical curriculum. So while everybody had to stop Tuesday, Thursdays, Fridays to go to shop class at night at the Union Hall, I was already making overtime.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. Throughout my upbringing, I had a lot of people who pushed me in the right direction.
Yeah,
So
and I think you
can't
hit
take any of that for granted.
I think you hit something really important, because I think regardless of whatever your career is, everybody tells people like, "Oh, your 20s are for messing around and go to college and meet people, and then you get out and you know drink and party and sleep with whoever and just go enjoy yourself, go find out who you are." Your career and your income is like a curve. It's an exponential curve, and the sooner you get on that curve, the faster you're going to rise. So even in the trades, getting some trade experience and getting some education in high school is extremely valuable. I think we've devalued that in a lot of different ways. But you, as somebody who even went to a union apprenticeship program, you had a leg up on other people because you had that experience going in. I think when I think union, like I look at my son. My son's 3. What career path would I want him to take? Unless he really had to go to college for something, or wanted to do something that he had to go to college for, or wanted to play sports in college or something, I would want him to get into the trades, and I'd want him to get into a union, and I'd want him to go through that program. Now, aside from the way that you were educated, describe the benefit of a union apprenticeship program. We'll start there, and then we'll hop on to other places.
Do you want me to talk about it in the high school perspective?
No, not the high school perspective. Like just in general, first year apprentice to journeyman.
What do I appreciate about that is it's going to give you the know-how, because during the work, like, and that's union, non-union, you're going to see people take pride in their work. You're going to see people say, hey, just put your head down, go to work. The focus is hyper work ethic. What I love about the apprenticeship, that's where theory comes into play. And that's where everything, of course, none of us take it to heart for the first 2 years until we're going for a license. But looking at it now, I wish I took my apprenticeship more serious, because the way they're teaching you in the apprenticeship nowadays, it's genuinely teaching you these things so you can be a better owner, contractor, or leader in the trade. When you're in it, you're just thinking, oh no, we're back in school. Remember, we're the CD students. We never liked school. So after an 8-hour day of work in New York City, Boston, it's the same thing. I remember I worked in the subway, the MTA. So I worked in the subway. It's cold, and then they throw you in a classroom from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. in a warm classroom. Everyone's going to nod off, everybody. So then it's like, it's just another class. But looking at it in retrospect now, those are giving you the steps that you needed, because they're telling you, they're not just teaching you little things like, oh, this is a connector, this is it. No, it's telling you like, hey, in the job site, you're going to see this. When you need to find this is where it's for. And it's basically telling you and teaching you how to be a facilitator for others. I completely missed that lesson. So many people think it's just about the part. It's just about the pipe. It's just about how do you wire something. It's teaching you how to be a facilitator. That is what the apprenticeship is all about, in my eyes.
And I think the most important part that everyone ignores, and everyone's in my comment section saying the same thing, is like the apprenticeship program in unions is structured, right? You're going to make X amount of dollars year 1, then year 2, you get a raise. It's a guaranteed raise every year for 4 to 5 years until you graduate, depending on your trade, right? So you know what you're getting into. The plus side of that is that if you outperform your contemporaries or your other people in your classes, like you probably did, you don't have to get the same money as them. The shop can reward you for that.
Yep.
So you are getting paid to get an education. So when a lot of people come at me in my comments and they're like, well, oh, you don't make that to start. You don't make $100,000 to start. It's like, well, what job do you expect to make $100,000 at without any education or experience? Exactly. You're not going to college. A company is probably paying for your school. The union pays for your school. That's what they pay union dues for and all those things, right? That's how those things are funded. And yeah, you might be making $18 and then $24 and then $30 and then, $35 and then $40 an hour until you journey out. And then maybe you're at $45, $50, depending on the state, $50 an hour plus benefits. And you're also paying into those things as well. That's what it's about. You are making money. You're not losing money or not earning money at all. You're getting paid to get the education, and you're already contributing to your retirement and things like that. Now,
Exactly.
if I was to point out a negative, and Will, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I'm just speaking from my friends' perspectives from what I've heard in unions. And by the way, before I applied to a college, I signed up for Local 537 in Boston. My plan was to be a pipe fitter. I never intended to go to college until my dad, like, basically just begged me to, whatever. Which if I went back and did it again, I probably would have just went into the apprenticeship
Yeah.
program. You can be kind of restricted to where you work, when you work, and who you work for, right? In other words, if you don't like your boss, if you don't like the company, you're kind of drafted and you're kind of there, and you got to get special permission to go to another company. So I had a friend who was in the electrical union in Boston. He was on the low voltage side. He had a company that wanted to take him onto the high voltage side, which 99 times out of 100 or 1,000 out of 1,000, the high voltage guys make more than the low voltage guys. Low voltage guys being control wiring and data wiring and stuff like that. High voltage being, power for lighting and things that turn things on and whatever. But he couldn't move. He couldn't move to go get more money, even though a company wanted to take him because the company he was with wouldn't give him up. Have you had that same experience? Is that accurate?
For me, not really, because I worked for the MTA. So I was working for the city and the state of New York when I worked with the union. And I'm going to say right now that union is completely different from a typical shop union, because it was like it's government union, and which I know you talk about there's good and bad and everything. Municipality unions, I think, is the worst. Just think about the DMV. You know what I mean? Because think about it. I literally was hired for the Grand Central expansion, Grand Central Terminal, with the LIR and everything coming in. They said, we have to sub this out to a union company because we know the union in-house is not going to get this done at the time frame. So once again, there's good and bad, and then there's different tiers to the union. So I worked union municipality, which is,
I believe so. I believe they tend to make a little bit less, but I think the sell is a different pension and annuity package. Like, I think it's a little more job security, but a little less money. And I think you kind of get an earlier exit out.
Exactly. So I would have had like 5 years 5 years out sooner than the typical union shop. We had half the salary of a typical union shop, but we had work 24/7. We didn't have to, after 6 months, show or go on, get furloughed or laid off. None of that we had to worry about. We had work 24/7. We had unlimited overtime too. So we got more money. We had a whole bunch of guys from these union shops always applying to to MTA, always, because we had just a better package.
So I think this is a good segue into the elephant in the room. I was going to go into how you left the union and what you're doing now, but the biggest objection that anybody has about unions anywhere, anytime, is what? It's people milking it and people not doing the job. And like you just said, I think a certain type of person, that municipality work or municipal union kind of appeals to a certain type of person. I'm not painting with a broad brush. I'm not saying that everyone's lazy in those unions. What I am saying is that even those unions acknowledge that they can't get the work done that some of the higher paying guys get. Right. Exactly. So what do you say about that? I mean, I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't like unions because they feel like people are milking it. And a lot of clients wouldn't hire a union if they didn't feel like they had to. And we can talk about what that means.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like, and I think you hit it on the head in the beginning. There's A, B, C players everywhere, and then there's certain industries that cater to their own. We just see with the climate right now with politics, why they're trying to clean up, government. You can all say they're union too, but when there's union as an organized group, as an organized labor movement, and then apply that movement to whatever industry you're in, the industry is going to dictate the flow of that. So we know municipalities, we know state governments, we know federal government. How are they funded? It's through taxes. So production is not a requirement. You understand? I remember they would say, we're not producing anything. It's maintaining. But then you go to a union shop where they're a contractor, that's all production. So time is money.
Yeah,
So
they are making money. They are not just
exactly.
spending taxpayer dollars. So I just want to be clear about what you're saying. You were talking about municipal unions versus union shops, actual contractors out there building and servicing buildings
Oh
for a
yeah, because
profit
there's layers to
as
a
a
union.
private business with union labor.
Exactly, because there's layers to it, and not just union. I mean, there's union who go against other unions. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It spirals out. So that's my experience. I came from the union municipal side of things, the state government side of things. And I think that's the bottom of the barrel when it came to the union. So it was literally my foreman. Yeah, I don't work for him, so I don't care. I remember day one when he walked me into my locker. So I worked night shift, graveyard shift. He came, sent me to my locker, and then he's like, we did the safety class, and he goes, all right, let me give you your PPE. He walked me to my locker, opened it up, and it's a cot. And he goes, that's your most important tool. I was like, no. And I'm like, I'm on probation thinking, oh, insane. As we start working, as we start doing things, I came from schooling. I want to like, hey, I'm working towards my journeyman license. I told you very on, I wasn't playing around. I was like 4 years in, get that license, jump out. I was there for a specific goal. I'm over here. And then to point, there would be days my foreman would literally stop me. And then he goes, Will, we're not in production. Chill. Days he would say, Will, you get paid from here down. I'm telling you, you don't have to worry. You don't have to.
For those on audio, Will's pointing to his neck, and he's sitting, and then he's pointing down. In other words, you don't get paid to think; you get paid to stink. You get paid for your body, not your mind.
So it's all these different things. And I think on the last podcast we talked about how I had like mentors in my life, and I talked about Mr. Perry. I think if I didn't, I'll give you a little refresher. Mr. Perry was like the senior guy. He was a year 29. So he was 1 year. I came in and it was like, it was my 4th year. So my 4th year in and his last year. And I was paired up with Mr. Perry because he was the old guy. So I was the young legs for him. You know what I mean? I always took care of Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry's like, we're going to go switch out track lighting light bulbs. And I'll be like, Mr. Perry, I'll bang this out. You go take your nap. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he always looked out for me.
Yeah.
But what the type of relationship we had, just so you guys know, it was like his son passed. And his son was like 2 years older than me. So he latched onto me like in the morning when we'd wake up and clock out, he would take me to breakfast and he's like, I just want to hang out with you. Like that was the type of relationship we had. So he clinged on to me and I loved this guy. He was awesome. We did overtime together, everything. Like, because it always went by seniority for overtime. He's like, I'm only doing overtime if Will's doing overtime. Don't can ask me if you're not going to bring him along. So that was the type of relationship we had. But I remember when he told me he was getting ready to retire, I said, Mr. Perry, the day you leave, I leave. And then he's like, seriously? I was like, I promise you, the same day you leave, I leave. And it was because he was the type where he said, Will, you don't belong here. Not like as in like he goes, don't let this place dumb you down. So that was my upbringing in the union. It was you get in there, you get to coast for the rest of your life. Plus I was in the type of municipality where everybody in that union, they were working on their second pension.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was working with so everybody, when I first came in, everybody was like, dude, who do you know? Like, how did you get in? Because I'm a 19-year-old kid, bro, in New York City's #1 union, So everyone's like, first of all, who do you know? Oh, you're working for IG. You're a mole. And nobody liked me. But I went in there and then Mr. Perry would always say the same thing. He goes, you're too smart. He goes, don't get sucked down here. You need it. To the point where when he retired, his last day was my last day. And that's when I told you I got my contractor's license. I was starting my own business at the time. He gave me his retirement bonus for 30 years. They gave him 5,000 cash at the party. Mm. He gave it right back to me. And he goes, get a van with it.
And get going.
Yeah.
So this is when you jump to non-union. So we're going to get into that in a second. I want to get into that in a second. And I do just want to highlight two things. And one of them would be, again, coasting, get in and coast. And I think if there was one position in unions that people hate more than any other position, and I got my favorites, right? I'm not saying that they're all bad, but I would say 19 out of 20, not the best, are the shop stewards.
Oh yeah.
And the shop steward's job is to what the job is supposed to be is that they're supposed to make sure that everyone's getting paid for every hour that they work, that they're doing work for their union, that nobody else is doing their work. Like, for
Yep.
instance, if a laborer, somebody else has a broom in their hand and they're cleaning up the job site, like the wire that the electrician leaves on the floor, nope, that's the laborers, and the shop steward will step in and not let them pick it up. Or vice versa, if you're a union electrician on a job site and a non-union electrician walks in, or a building engineer starts wiring something that he's not supposed to wire, they'll step in and they'll stop it and say, hey, that's supposed to be our work. And they're kind of the liaison for in the eyes and ears of the union to make sure that all the rules are being followed. Right now, with that, a lot of people abuse that, and the shop steward will run around the building or run around multiple job sites, and he'll make sure that he's getting a paycheck from this company and that company and that company, but he won't actually do anything. And I've actually had to tell clients that even though it's a 2-person carpenter job, in certain municipalities, the second person on the job is supposed to be a shop steward. Second person on the property is supposed to be a shop steward. And the company will actually call me and tell me I have to charge you for 3 guys because I'm not going to get any productivity out of this shop steward.
Yeah.
The companies will actually, like my subcontractors will actually tell me that. And then I have to pass that on to the client for T&M. And they're like, why is this 3 guys for 2 days? And it's like, I don't know what to tell you, but this is a shop steward. And I have to explain it to them. And then they roll their eyes and they're like, why is that my problem? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, but it's not my problem. I shouldn't have to pay for it. Right.
Yeah.
So people don't like them. Now, I think I've highlighted, and we've highlighted adequately, that a lot of people abuse the union, right? I think anytime that there's a program and protection out there for people, people will abuse it. You see that with welfare, you see that with subsidies, you see that with anything, right? That being said, in the house that I grew up in, with all my friends' parents that were all in different unions, local 103 Boston, 537 Boston, 17 Boston, which is electricians, pipe fitters, and sheet metal workers in Boston, or 223 laborers, or 33 carpenters, whatever it is. I was always raised that you're in the union, therefore you have a standard. You are to be there 15 minutes, boots tied, tools ready. 15 minutes early is on time. You are to not have holes in your jeans. You're not to smell. You're to have clean clothes every day. You're to be clean cut. In other words, you're supposed to have clean facial hair, cut fingernails, and we are the best, and we're going to act like we are Alabama, right? So like our product is our brand, and you have to live up to that, right? So there was a very high work ethic and a very high standard that I was raised in, and I don't think I really understood why people hated unions until I was in the business and I saw the negatives, and I saw, the clients not really understanding what they were getting and things like that. So there's a huge upside too. And I think that's why I would always err somebody towards the side of a union apprenticeship, because there are more people that fit that mold than don't.
Yep.
And I think that's a great place to learn and to set the standard for yourself.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So with that, you touched on kind of what I would call golden handcuffs, right? Like they disincentivize, or they make it really hard for people to walk away from the union.
Yeah.
And that's because it's a really good deal. Like some people get vacation, but everyone gets a retirement, a pension, an annuity, top of the line benefits. The worst thing that ever happened to me was I turned 26 years old and they got kicked off of my dad's local 537 benefits in Boston. Like that was amazing health insurance when I had to get my own. I realized how good it was because it sucked. I felt like I had to get another surgery just because I had to get my money's worth, right? just for the heck of it. And when you walk away, you lose those things, right? So talk about that. Talk about making that decision and why ultimately walking away from all those benefits and kind of a guaranteed good life, above average life, early retirement was something that you were willing to walk from. And what did you walk for?
So you ever heard that expression, like your grass is greener wherever you water it, right? Or you have 2 dogs on your shoulder. Which one's the bigger one? It's the one you're feeding, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, the second that I knew, I'm like, hey, I'm working towards my license, I started watering other grass. I was feeding another dog. And then just what happens when you start watering your grass, you start appreciating it more. You're like, oh, wow, I appreciate studying, right? After your apprenticeship, they don't give you much classes after that. You're just coasting. After that, it's like, I want to take my license exam. Union doesn't want you guys to get your license. So it's like, I want to be a better person. I want to be a better electrician. But you can only do that in the parameters of what IBEW gave me. Right. You can go through their ranks. Cool. But it doesn't hold value outside of that. So then when I'm like, I want to get licensed, whoa. I got pulled to the room. Why you got to go license, contractors don't even make them much money. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? So just the simple fact that I started watering other stuff. I remember my first fight. I got into a fist fight at the cafeteria because I brought my code book to the lunchroom. And the guys just went whoop, and threw it on the table. At the same time, Mr. Perry looked up and he's like, don't let him punk you. So Mr. Perry, I'm telling you, he was my dude for everything. I looked up and he's like, you do what you got. So boom, boom, boom. We do whatever, we handle it, and then whatever happens afterwards, Mr. Perry goes, don't let no one punk you. And the next day I was walking to the cafeteria with no code book. Mr. Perry stops me and goes, you go grab that fucking code book and you slam it on the table. You come back. That was Mr. Perry. So I went back to my locker, got the code book, walked back to lunchroom, threw it on the table, and we had to fight a second day in a row.
So do you think that's the union that you were in? Because I feel like most tradesmen that I've worked with that journey out, and when I say journey out, I mean finish your apprenticeship, become a journeyman, and you're paying your full dues and you get your full benefits and all those things. I feel like a lot of them have their license. Do they not? Like a traditional local 103, or what is it in New York? Local 1, local 3?
No, local 3.
Local 3.
Yeah.
Like did they not get their license?
No. If you look up, very few get their license. Now I know there's some that do get their license. But I know personally, there's an individual I'll introduce you to afterwards. The union started deciding, let's create our own license because they don't want people going for their state license. So they'll be like, you're a licensed electrician for IBEW. Can't pull a permit though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So you got a freaking gold sticker now.
So let's just call it out. Why is getting a state license so important for the young people out there? Because that's the ultimate goal. And then I want to talk about different options for education and maybe some things that you're doing, maybe an event you got coming up. Yeah. But why is it so important to get a license in anything?
In anything, because when you understand the skill trades, and I'm having this battle right now, for example, for the solar industry. So I'll give you this experience. It's happening right now since solar and renewables is so new. They're about 10, 20 years in. All these other unions been around for hundreds of years, 100, 200 years. So they're already established. They already know the rules and how things operate. Renewables, completely new.
So just so you know, I'm wearing one of my favorite subcontractors in Boston, Local 537 and Local 17, established 1891.
There you go.
Yeah. We've been around a long time.
Around 100 plus years. So what I love about it and what I love about the renewable side, and that's why I push it, because they're so new. I already know all the roadblocks they're going to hit into. For example, renewables, solar, it's a byproduct of electrical. So you need an electrical license. Everybody wants to push, for example, I'm not knocking it. I'm saying these courses are needed. NAPSIP certification. Hey, get NAPSIP certified so you understand how to install solar. And then they push NAPSIP. It's a certificate. I can't pull a permit with that. I need a license. So when you are licensed, you're able to do work on your own. When you do work on your own, I'm telling you, the worst thing you can do if you're an employee is get that license, because your boss's tone, that foreman's tone, your partner's tone, all of a sudden you start listening to it more. You're like, there was a little bass in that voice. I don't want to show up tomorrow anymore. You know what I mean? That's what a license does for you, because you now don't have to respond to that. And then once you get that license, like everything else, you start feeding that dog, you start watering that grass. Mm-hmm. The more effort, the more time you put into developing yourself and developing that skill that you had, you're going to start seeing like, okay, there's a lot of things in the union I might not like. There's a lot of things in the union where if I stay here, it's just going to cut me off long term.
Yeah, I think
You know?
I think you just said it. It changes from what is the union doing for me and what is it providing me to what is it holding me back from doing? Because now, and the like calling it what it is, having a license enables you to take responsibility for your work. It enables you to pull a permit, which means what? You can start your own business. And when
Mm-hmm.
you go to get a business loan, a small business loan, an SBA, what do they want to see? They want to see somebody who has a license actually own the business. Otherwise, they won't give you the loan. They may give somebody a loan as a 50% stakeholder or a 60% stakeholder, but
Yep.
a substantial stake has to be held by a license holder. So all of a sudden, if you can go work on your own and you don't need the union or a union shop to put you on a job site to make that money, and you might be able to make more money because now you can create your own wage based on whatever the demand is for your services, which I will say again in other states is a lot of people think that you got to take a pay cut to go to Florida, but if you're really good at what you do, you can get paid a lot of money to be an electrician in Florida because people will pay a premium for it. But that's why it's so important. So that's why I always tell people if you want to be an entrepreneur, there's no better way than to do it in the trades and to do a licensed trade. And a
Yeah.
licensed trade is the MEPs, the HVAC, electrical, and plumbing trades.
Yep. I
Those
say that all
licenses
the
are
time.
just a little bit different than a carpentry trade. Usually those trades, it's less about the scope that you're doing and more about the state acknowledging you as a competent contractor and like somebody
Yep.
that's financially sound and not supposed to screw people. Whereas those three licenses, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, are more about the life safety component and the longevity and functionality of what you're installing because you're welding, you're dealing with power, you're dealing with fire suppression, you're dealing with whatever that may be.
Exactly.
Talk to me about what's the alternative, right? You're a business owner. You,
Oh.
you own, kind of two businesses and you're big on education. If somebody doesn't want to go union, what other options are out there and how prevalent is it to get an equivalent apprenticeship or education program to work towards that license?
What do I appreciate about what we're doing now? And I don't want to put the spotlight totally on us. I just want to make it clear that there's a phrase that we have whenever we have our meetings when it comes to the school for Energize Us. And it's what got us here won't get us there. And every time we talk about what are we going to do, either it's content, either it's our apprenticeship training, either it's our train the trainer program, either if it's our test prep, our electrical exam prep, whatever we do, we say, what are they doing right now? And then we say, basically, throw it away. How do we reinvent the wheel? Everyone talks about you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Every day when we have our meetings, we say, how do we reinvent it? Because our number one thing that we see in the trades is I've been doing this for 30 years as a badge. And I'm saying we got to throw that out now because the last 30 years got us here and we're having all these issues. So how do we tackle that? And then that's when it comes to the apprenticeship training. The apprenticeship
I
training.
just want to explain when I've been doing this 30 years as a badge, that's like everybody's trump card that I don't have to listen to you. What I say is the law because I've been doing this since before you were born. Just listen to me. And that's the end of the story.
Yep.
It's like old dog, no new tricks because I'm the old dog and this is just how it's going to be. And Will's saying that's stupid because that's not how we evolve as humans in any way.
That's the biggest, bro. I'm telling you, I hear that and I just shut off. So I'm talking to an emotional man at this point. There is no winning that argument at this point. It's just going to get ugly. That's when you just say, let me just, how do I get out of this conversation and just walk away? But that is my biggest thing. And especially when we start looking at even different programs out there, because there's, NICA, there's IBEW, they have their own apprenticeship program. Then we have other organizations like ABC, IEC, that are teaching. There's Licking Technical High School. And once again, all of these are state approved programs. So if you want to go get your license, you can get it union and non-union. But once again, and when I look at something, I say, what got us here? Okay, ABC's around, IEC's around, unions around. Awesome. How do I compete in this new space that's been around for, like what you said, 200 years? How do I compete with somebody who's 200 years? And I go back to my business practices as a contractor. Everybody always wants to talk about like, how do you price a job? And everyone says, charge what the big guys charge. And I said, why? Because me as a homeowner, why would I charge what the guy who's been around for 30 years charge? He's more rooted in the community. He already has 30 years of review. I trust that guy. He's not going to, the dude who just started shop can dip on me, you know? So if money is the same, I'm going to go with the guy who's been around longer. But that gives you the opportunity. How are you going to differentiate yourself compared to these guys? So that's where we're coming in with Energize Us. Union's been around 100, 200 years. ABC, 50. IEC, 30. How do I compete with these guys who've been around so long? And what are we doing? We do it all the time. Media, marketing. And then you use their own rules against them. Think about it. Who is the face of IBEW?
Department of Labor.
No, nobody. Right?
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. No, it's International Brotherhood. That's it.
No much money, how much money you throw at it, you can't make somebody an influencer.
Right.
You can help with market it, but that person still has to be relatable. Right? Think about it. If the union is going to make somebody an influencer, is that a union position? So it's going to go to the most senior guy. So you're going to have the guy who's been around for 40 years on TikTok now.
Well, and let me just connect some dots here, Will. So, I mean, basically what you're talking about is your own educational platform. So you have your own company, right? That's an actual contractor, but then you have Energize Us, which is your endeavor, your attempt to create a path of education for people to come in to recruit. But also what you're doing, the best that I've seen out of electricians is actually putting out good content that talks about being an electrician, being a contractor, a business owner, which I think when I talk to high school students that I know, I've been in after school programs for 12 years talking about them. What do they want to do? They want to be entrepreneurs. That's what they want to do first and foremost. And if they have any sort of appeal or interest in anything construction, it's electrical.
Yep.
So there's that. And you also have an event coming up, right? In Dallas.
Yeah.
So talk about that event and what that's about.
So not just to check you, but we have our Department of Labor, our electrical curriculum is approved in all 50 states.
Okay.
If you need your apprenticeship, it's not, we're trying. We're already teaching it. You know what I mean? And that's what this convention is. So all our students, once again, we're trying to copy the ABC, the NICA model. This event that we have is our flagship event per year, where we get all our past students, and new companies that want to open up their own apprenticeship training through us. We invite them to the Builders Convention. And that's where we're doing the hands-on thing, the hands-on demonstrations, where, just like I mentioned before, the marketing side of things, they're not showcasing what the trades have to offer. Union's not doing that. ABC's not doing that. So that's where we're getting the biggest names in social media together. And instead of having a competition style, it's working alongside each other. So now we're showcasing current generation as well as the next generation, what the trades have to offer. And then we have the contractors who are jumping in. So we can not only work with them to build their business up, but at the same time, develop their own apprenticeship programming in-house.
So tell me, what is in it for a young person that's thinking about a non-union apprenticeship? What's the structure like compared to a union? What's the pay like? And then after, once they journey out, they get that J card, as a lot of people call it. What does that compensation look like? Because the narrative is that if it's not union, you're slave driving and you're breaking your back for peanuts.
Exactly. So just like what I mentioned before, what got us here won't get us there. We have to recognize what's going on. Everyone goes through these apprenticeship trainings, Lincoln Tech's, Porter Chester, and they said basically you can sleep for the next 6 months and you'll get your certificate. There's nothing really going to go for you. What we are doing, we're taking a proactive approach and we're doing company-sponsored apprenticeship. So my doors are not open to everyone. That goes also with my message saying, I don't think there's a worker shortage. I think we have a retention issue. And I'm also saying the bar is set so low, everybody's working on 25%. If we bumped up to 50%, trust me, a lot more would get done. You understand?
I don't want to gloss over the fact that you said company-sponsored apprenticeship.
Correct.
What does it mean to sponsor?
So if you are a contractor, and of course you have to be, hopefully you have the means to sponsor your own employees to go through it. But one thing that we're working on is how do we attract the next generation into the trades and retain them? because a lot of people on social media want to say the trades are cool, 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 but it's not cool in that attic, midsummer, what we talked about, or waking up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning because your guy wants to start at 6 to be out by 2. That's not fun. And starting off low, when you at Target, you can get $20 an hour starting. So what are all these things that's currently going on? How do we change that? Our company's sponsored program is we're working with contractors to develop their own training platform. We're developing their own in-house apprenticeship training. So basically, if you have an employee and you're part of the Energize Us organization, we will handle all the apprenticeship training, of course, at a prorated rate. So one, it's an investment into your team. Now the employee is looking forward to next 4 years and that pay scale that we mentioned based off Department of Labor. But at the same time, what's the next caveat we're doing? Energize Us. How do we attract the next generation? As a contractor, I'm having interviews with individuals, like we mentioned last time. I'm turning some people away because they're just looking for money. They're just looking for, I can't work at 16 an hour for the next 6 months when I have my rent at the end of the month. But Target could pay you 20 right now. So what we're doing is we're offering affordable housing for Energize Us. So if you're a contractor and if you have an employee who passed your probation period, you're putting him through the apprenticeship training. And if you are having financial issues, we understand we can't pay you $20 an hour because the pay scale, because we also learned during COVID what happens when you incentivize poor behavior. People just jump around now. So we're saying, hey, we can't pay you more, but that number one bill that you have, affordable, the housing, your rent, the mortgage, will reduce that for you in our affordable housing program. So that is going up and running by 2026.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. So that is not something that a union can offer you. They cannot offer you affordable housing. That's incredible. And what I want you to understand is whenever you hear about somebody sponsoring somebody, that means it's getting paid for. That means that a lot of people talk about the cost of trade school and that it's expensive and that the only way to do it is in the union. The union has a great trade school. It's a great opportunity. Yep. I already said, even with everything Will's saying, I would still tell my son to go do it if we were in a good union city, right? Or at least consider it as a top option, right? Maybe only if what Will is offering right now was something available. And I think that the education that is going to get delivered there is consistent across the board. Just like I said with the quality of work in non-union subs, there's A's and then there's D's. Will is an A. Will is an A also in mentorship. So what's really important and the most thing that you can do for your career, regardless if it's union or non-union, is put yourself in a good situation to get mentored. Will is seeing the number one problem in the industry, and that is retention. It's attracting the right people and then retaining them. The right people. Like he said, he doesn't take everybody because he doesn't want people just there for a paycheck. He wants people that want to learn and pick up a career and invest in themselves. But those are the types of companies that you want to look for. People that are going to sponsor you, people that are going to invest in you. And I can't stress enough that what Will just said is something unprecedented. I've been in and around the trades my entire life, all 35 years. I've actually been in the industry for 21 years around commercial construction and union and non-union shops, and I've never heard of anything like that. So that's incredible. And you can clip that. I
got the news article. It's on LA Times, so I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send me that. I definitely want to share it. Talk to me about compensation. So again, I told you what the narrative is, that it's only union or you're poor.
Yep.
Now I've had a lot of people on my podcast actually come on and talk about what they make. And I think people are surprised. I get a lot of feedback that they're surprised of how much non-union people make. Yeah. So what do you see, as a delta in a compensation package?
So if you're coming into the apprenticeship, we are going to follow the Department of Labor guidelines. So on every state, they have a guidelines. Hey, if you're coming into the apprenticeship program, if you have no education, we're going to start you at pop, 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 pop. And then this is every 6 months. If you're a company sponsored, you're promising you're going to have a review and then raises every year to match. For example, in Connecticut, if you are in the electrical program, you're starting at 16 an hour. And then you go up 10% every year. So what? By end of graduation and 4-year program, you're looking at what, 20, 22, 23 an hour, where you're ready to go for your license. Once you get your license as a journeyman, you start at 25. And that's the new bar. That's the new cap based off the Department of Labor in our state.
Right.
So we're going to follow that same structure. Of course, if you go to the union, they're going to say, once again, hey, join us. We'll give you 30 an hour. Once again, a new company, just like a new business, just like a new contractor, how do you compete with somebody who has already established a price?
Sure.
They can now do that. You have to leverage other things. And that's why we're leveraging ours.
Got it. So that's all very, very interesting. One thing that I will say, and I do want to touch on, the client perspective before we wrap up, but a lot of people, you touched on it. Who do you know? How'd you get in? Yeah. Are you a mole? Like, are you a spy? Like, who put you here? Yeah. A lot of people think that whether it's racism or whether it's, you got to have a brother or an uncle in the union and they got to get you in or you're not getting in. A lot of people see that as a barrier of entry. Not only do I disagree with that, I think that was absolutely true, in our father's time, right? That was definitely true. And unions got in trouble for it. And, definitely in New York that was happening. And what I will say is one of the best ways to get in the union is start kicking ass in non-union. So if you want that and you don't necessarily, maybe you don't want to be a business owner, maybe you just want to go good union wage, pension, annuity, whatever. Almost everybody that I've talked to that isn't in the union, or even a bunch of people that I talked to that are in the union on this podcast, they were on a non-union job site and were approached by the union. They were up on the ladder, and all of a sudden somebody's standing at the bottom of the ladder, and it's a guy with like a clipboard, and he's like, "Hey, I'm from the union. Like, do you want to surpass our apprenticeship program and just come on as a journeyman?"
Yeah.
And then they consider it, and some people take it, some people don't. One guy took it, and then he left again, or he left the union. But the point being, just start. Just go to work. Just take the opportunity. Just get paid to get an education and start working towards that license. And ultimately, the whole URL should be that license, however you get to it. That should be the goal for your career. And then once you get a taste of it, then you know which way you want to go. And I can't stress enough that, again, I love what Will does with his business. I think that there's nothing wrong with it. I also think that there's nothing wrong with the union and the way that they do business. And I think as long as everybody's operating in a free capital market where everyone's competing with price, quality, and timeline, then it's fair game. Yep. Right. And I think that's the union mantra for a long time was that, hey, we got a higher quality, we may be higher price, but we can get it done faster because we're more educated. And then the fourth kind of arm would be safety.
Yep.
Now, with that, I do have to say, I am unaware of a client that would hire a union contractor if they didn't have to.
Mm.
And what do I mean by that? I mean, as somebody who sees clients all over the board, whether it's tech, whether it's an office, whether it's a pharmaceutical lab, which you might notice that a lot of pharmaceutical labs are not in cities. They tend to be outside of cities. They might have an office in the city, but they tend to be outside the cities. They are all non-union and they won't even entertain it. The only time that I've ever actually seen union trades preferred or if they know the building or if somebody in the building has a strong feeling about unions. A hospital, a lot of the times, like they just want that strong background. They want what they perceive to be an educated workforce. So they want somebody that installed the system, to be around for the maintenance. So they don't want anybody else touching the system. They want that one contractor touching it. And oftentimes they get the guaranteed kind of workforce, right? A lot of the union contractors that have been around for a long time, again, great company, EM Duggan, love them. They have been around for a long time. They have the resume, they have the cachet, and they have the manpower. And if they don't have the manpower, then the union halls back them up with more educated manpower that they can guarantee is educated because they went through their apprenticeship program. And that's kind of the benefit there. But I bring it back to, I think that where the unions are losing is they've kind of lost sight of the free market enterprise, and you have to compete with either price, quality, or duration. And if you're not, then people aren't going to go your way. And I think if you talk to a lot of people in a lot of cities, a lot of the unions have lost a foothold in the city. They've lost real estate. What do you have to say about that? Do you have any opinion on that or any kind of
Yeah.
perspective?
Do you know the three reasons why unions were created in the US at the 1800s?
Go for it.
The 8-hour workday, fair wages, and safe work conditions. So that was the three pillars the union used to even be created. We're talking about, the American Revolution, a big business, industrial revolution. I'm sorry, right? Big business, Rockefeller, Carnegie Hall, the steel mills, those were the three reasons union was created. So I always ask myself, once again, what got us here won't get us there. Can you find solutions to those three things? Only union? Or can you find solutions to those everywhere now? Are they readily accessible?
Yeah, I think you got a good point. Like the unions are totally to thank for where we are today. And the question is have people abused it? And are they holding up their end of the bargain? Because like I said, I was raised where there was a standard. If
Yep,
that standard
exactly.
isn't being upheld, or if another person is now in the market competing at at the same budget or as good as competitive a budget and a high quality and a short duration, not a super long project, then what's the incentive?
Exactly. So that's exactly where we're at now. I think because of the union, and I'm thankful for the union to create that standard, it created everybody else to raise their own standards. But if you don't now raise it, everyone's on the same playing field now because this is the new standard. You see where I'm getting at, right?
Sure.
Oh, it's awesome that they led the movement. That's why it's called the labor movement. They led it. They established it. Boom, this is the pinnacle. But what happens with clearly 100 to 200 years? Everybody already came up. Safety has a big focus, right? We have organizations now on top of that, like OSHA and these different organizations now to make sure that you're working safe. So you can work safe or you can have someone monitor your safety without having to be union.
Right.
The 8-hour workday, that just became normal now. So boom, 8-hour workday. So to attract people to come into the trades, to be a contractor, now you're offering the same to equal of quality when it comes to standards than anybody else. I haven't met a contractor who goes, hey man, we're going to half-ass this job. Nobody's going to say, hey, what's everybody say? I've been doing it for 30 years. Of course I'm going to take it. Everyone's giving the same pitches,
right?
But like you said, not only has they not gone up in standards or came up with the new curveball, the new innovative way. Yeah, no new trick. So everybody else is on the same playing field. And guess what? Now you have your members, each one of those members as an extension of who you are, that brand that you talked about that they took pride in. Mm-hmm. And now those are starting to come down. So you see where we're going, right?
And I think in red tape hurts, right? Because if you have rules about who can touch what and who can show up when, and you're creating more rules just to create more rules, and I get it, to protect the worker and to make sure everyone's fairly compensated. I totally get it. But from a client perspective, if that's just making it more of a pain in the ass, then it just disincentivizes them to hire you if you're not safer measurably, right? Which the safety standards have caught up in non-union, and your quality isn't that much better and you don't work that much faster. And I think when I say, I want to be explicit about this, gun to my head, if I had to run a job, I'd use all union trades. A lot of that is because when I go to a lot of non-union companies and I'm in situations where I have to bid to all non-union subcontractors, I'll inevitably be forced by either a boss or a client to take a low number. And when I take a low number on a non-union contractor, there's a lot more risk there. And I walk the job site and the foreman may know what's going on. But if I ask the 10 guys that are standing up studs or bending conduit or whatever, they quite literally don't know what they're doing. All they know is that they were told to bend the conduit or they were told to, screw something to the wall or something. They truly don't know what they're doing. So I agree. There is still a benefit there. And but that's not to say that I haven't worked with subs. Like I could rattle off 10 non-union subs right now in multiple different states, including Massachusetts and Florida and New York, that I would put them right up there with, the big union boys that have been around for 100 years. There's just not as many of them. And I know that they pay their guys because I see the slips, right?
Yeah.
And they're paying them. They're paying them, and they get a 401k and a truck and a gas card and everything. So it's not like the fringe benefits, aren't there either. Because they would have to if they wanted to compete, right? They'd have to reward good talent. And if they want to be an
E-
A-level contractor, they have to.
Exactly. So that's the world we're living in now. So established the standards. It forced everybody to come up, which is awesome. But now where do we go when we're all at the same sort of playing field? Like, once again, we always talk about with other contractors, and everyone's always asking, how much do you price? For the most part, everybody's paying people the same rate, 30,
Mm-hmm.
40, 50 an hour. Most people have the same amount of vehicles. The insurance is all the same. You're going to save $10 with one. Everyone's typically in the same playing field. So how are we trying to differentiate that? And that's why, what's awesome, once again, what the union brought us up to do, you know, we're all in the same playing field, but at the same time, now what are we going to do?
Right.
And that is nice now because it's like, it's going to force the union to create, or are they going to lose more capital? It's going to also create the non-union shops like ABC, IBEW, IEC. They started coming up because they're like, oh, we can now start getting leg in the game too now because of they're not growing. And then I'm seeing it now and like, oh, ABC is lacking in this. How can, so you see, it's like, it's generational now. Everyone's trying to figure out what's that next piece.
Well, I just want to be clear too. If it was one other thing to say, said at the beginning, one of the bad parts about unions is that they kind of control who, what, where, and when you work. And if there isn't any work, you go on what they call the bench, right? And
Yep.
if you get off the bench and you go to work in somebody's house somewhere, or you get caught with your tools working at a non-union job, not getting paid a union wage, what happens? Not only do
Oh,
you
yeah.
lose your job, but you lose your pension, your annuity, everything. Even if you retire and you're, down in the Caribbean, not the Caribbean, but if you're down somewhere, working on somebody's house or something like that, or on a non-union job of any kind, you can lose all those things too in retirement. You can actually lose your retirement while you're retired.
I
So
believe it.
there are a lot of people that I talk to that terrifies them, and they'd rather have the freedom to work for whoever they want. And the best way to do that is when you get your license. So, Will, again, I appreciate you having you on. I know you're a busy guy. You got other places to be. Will, you got to go follow him. I'm going to tag him in any of these posts and everything. Go look at Energize Us. He's got awesome educational content. He's got an awesome event coming out there. If you're in or around the Dallas area, is it June 30th through July 2nd? I think it's Monday,
Exactly.
June 30th through Wednesday, July 2nd this year down in Dallas. Reach out to me. I'll connect you with him. And an amazing event to go to, whether you're a contractor, you're looking for talent, you're looking to grow in your own career, you're looking to break into the industry. It's a good group of people to be around. And Will's got some freaking heavy hidden influences going to that thing, man. There's some people with like millions of followers going to that thing to speak. So he's got top talent in top personalities going down there. So go check him out. And I'll catch everybody next time. Will, thank you.
Appreciate you, brother.